Hi, everybody. Welcome to Friends Talk Money. I'm Pam Krueger, co-host of Money Track on public television and founder of wealthramp.com.
I'm Richard Eisenberg, a personal finance writer and editor, and formerly the editor of the Money and Work channels for the PBS site for people over 50, nextavenue.org.
And I'm Terry Savage, nationally syndicated personal finance columnist and the author of The Savage Truth on Money.
We're three friends who like to talk money and all the issues that come with it.
On this podcast, we're trying to help you understand your personal finances
to get you and your retirement on the right path for true financial peace of mind.
Hi, everybody. This year, when the stock and bond markets have been down sharply, inflation's been painfully high, it's been a tough time for retirees trying to make their money last, and for people close to retirement who are worrying about it. So we're going to talk today about ways to help make your money last. And we're going to do this based on an article that I just wrote on the MarketWatch site, and based on a new book by a really smart retirement analyst named Jim Mahaney. And what he wrote was a book called How to Craft a Resilient Retirement Income Plan. So what's a resilient retirement income plan? Well, I'll have Jim explain. He just wrote the book on it.
Well, the idea is to have a retirement income plan that no matter what happens in the market, no matter how long you or a spouse lives, you have income that you can count on. And so it allows us, frees us up, if you will, to enjoy our retirement a lot more.
Pretty good to me. We'll talk about how to create a resilient retirement income plan in a minute. But first, I'd love to hear from Terry and Pam. It really has become tougher to make your money last in retirement this year, hasn't it, Terry?
Well, absolutely. And you can put a finger on that. It is, of course, inflation. So before we do this program today, let's just say we could guarantee you that your income would last your lifetime. No problem with that. We'll just put it all in an immediate annuity and you will get a check a month from life for life, and you're going to get it from a really strong insurance company. But we cannot guarantee that that check a month for life will buy your lifestyle, the one you're accustomed to, because of inflation. Now think about this. If you heard about the rule of 72, it says divide any number into 72, and it will tell you how long it will take that number to double or conversely be cut in half. So let's put it this way. If we have 3% inflation divided into 72, well, the value, your spending power of your money will be cut in half in about 25 years. But now, let's suppose we have 7% inflation. Unthinkable? Whoops, that's exactly what we've been having. Divide that into 72, and your money, your spending power will be cut in half in 10 years. Now, that's kind of a time horizon we all see for our retirement. So when you craft a retirement strategy, yeah, we could give you a check a month for life, but we also have to worry about offsetting inflation, which is eating away at the spending power of your money. And that, I think, Richard, is what Mahaney's saying. What we're all saying here is this is a little bit of a science and somewhat of an art, and it's something you must think about. It's not just I have X dollars and I could divide it in a 20-year retirement because I'm not retiring till I'm 70 maybe. That should do it. It's really, what will that money buy? And will it keep me in my lifestyle?
And Richard and Terry, I think that the whole idea of focusing on the one fact that we do know, we can't control it, but we know it, we're living longer. That's why we're having this discussion, because we're talking about, funding 20 years, and inflation does matter. Interest rates matter. All of these things that you maybe seemed straightforward when you were thinking about retirement years ago being maybe 10 years, and now retirement maybe being 30 years. So that means that planning how we will cover that extra span of life is just the biggest topic in retirement thinking from everybody's perspective. It's no longer just a casual question that requires a casual answer. This is what keeps people up at night, and it causes stress and anxiety. And I take this so seriously. And our advisors that I work with on WealthRamp take retirement income planning to a whole different level, because They have to be plugged into the most up-to-date, powerful retirement modeling and withdrawal software that actually just focuses on withdrawals and taking into consideration investment returns, your whole financial picture, your healthcare, your spending trajectory, your Social Security, your Medicare, federal and state taxes. So every level of detail. So it certainly isn't something anymore that can just be a static picture. And there's a good reason why it keeps people up at night. We do have to plan for this phase.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the resilient part of this resilient retirement income plan. Mahaney talks about adopting what he calls a dynamic strategy to cover some of your discretionary expenses in retirement. In other words, instead of trying to follow what's called that 4% rule, that's the idea where you withdraw 4% of your savings in the first year of retirement, and then you increase that amount every year with inflation. Instead of that, he says, take a flexible approach. Instead, he says, withdraw more or less from your savings each year, depending on how your investment portfolio is doing. So in good years for the stock market, you might take out more from your retirement savings because you can afford to. And in bad years, you might take out less. And then you adjust your retirement spending accordingly. So in the years that the stock market's down, you might spend less. And in the years when the stock market is when it's up, you might spend more. But the key is to make sure you're able to cover your essential expenses with the income that you can count on. That can be Social Security, it could be a pension, it could be an annuity like Terry was talking about that makes regular guaranteed payments. So let me stop it there and ask Terry and Pam, what do you think of the idea of this dynamic, resilient retirement income plan and the idea of figuring out how much to take out of your savings each year based on the markets?
Yeah, I think that's a recipe for staying up late at night, but in fact, actuarially, it's a good idea. But let me just go back for a minute to that old 4% rule. Let's just tee this up maybe a little better. It used to be, as you described, that was a safe rule of thumb. Take out 4% and every year adjust it for inflation. This past year, we had a black swan, a really weird event. That 4% rule used to assume 60% stocks, 40% bonds, and that over the long run, that would work. Well, this was the first year in forever, I mean, I've been around forever, that both stocks and bonds, which were supposed to be offsetting each other and balancing other, both were losers. This is the first time in memory that has happened. Stocks lost money because we had the consequences of the pandemic and what was the economy going to do? But China's shutting down, a million reasons, you know all of them. And bonds, that supposedly conservative proportion, as we've discussed in other podcasts, lost money because when interest rates rise, the market value of bonds goes down. They're not going to default, but the value of them, who wants your old 3% bond if they could get a 4 or 5% bond? So the market value goes down. So when you look at your returns for the whole year 2022, for the first time ever, the most conservative portfolios, the most conservative age-based target date retirement funds, all lost money because both stocks and bonds lost money. And then everybody went, oh my gosh, you can't do that 4% rule anymore. Well, Richard, since we decided to do this podcast just in the last couple of days, Morningstar has come out with a new report. So let's just assume you were looking not to do what we're going to talk about when we get to this dynamic thing, but let's assume you were looking for a formula because as I did, you rolled your eyes when we said, well, in good years, we'll take out more. Wait. We might need more in bad years. But here's what Morningstar says, and I'm going to read it to you because it's just hot off the presses, literally, that they just announced that a starting withdrawal rate of 3.8% is safe in Morningstar's model over a 30-year time horizon. What does safe mean? It means it brings a 90% likelihood of not running out of money. Now, wait, I'm going to qualify that a little bit. It is based on, number one, a balanced portfolio of 50% stocks and 50% bonds. But don't argue with me about that. That's the assumption in the Morningstar things. But there's a big caveat on there. It's called sequence of returns risk, something I've talked about in all my books and in all my speaking engagements. If you have a bunch of years at the beginning of your retirement portfolio where the investment returns lag historical averages, then all of a sudden you're taking out too much money at the beginning And if your growth years in the stock market come later on, you could be left without enough money to support your retirement.
Terry, Richard, I'm going to tell you about, because I tap into our advisors who are retirement income specialists, fee-only fiduciary. This is their whole world. And I'll tell you where they see the hockey puck going with this kind of planning. It's definitely no longer static. It definitely matters when people are looking at, again, funding 20 years, 30 years, Monte Carlo. There's, there was the bucket strategy. There's different strategies, different names, but Monte Carlo modeling has been around. It's been the go-to. And now it seems like the next evolution to take that Monte Carlo into dynamic is where the software that's very, very powerful. There's one particular software that was developed by someone who I know who graduated from MIT with a advanced degree in finance. And basically he developed the software because he was so tired of the gaps that occurred when there wasn't enough dynamicism built in. So in other words, being able to automatically adjust based on actual market performance and get as close as you can to being as fluid as you possibly can be. And this kind of powerful modeling and powerful software is something that, people who come to me and are asking me, I just had a couple yesterday who have probably more than enough money they need. They're in their early 70s and they've got over $1 million. And based on what they just told me in a nutshell, they probably have enough money to last the rest of their lives. But what they're looking for is they want to get a sense of, a real spending strategy, that their biggest nightmare is that they were wrong and that they thought they had enough and they don't have enough for all the reasons Terry just mentioned, with inflation cutting it in half and so forth in 10 years if inflation stayed where it is. So this is the biggest issue that keeps people up at night. And the more that the sophisticated modeling can become dynamic and resilient in real time and factor in federal, state taxes, everything around it, including Medicare and Social Security, all of those things, then the better we get at calibrating. Can you do this yourself? I'll talk about that in a second. Or do you want help in doing this? That's a big question, because it's the whole difference between sleeping at night and feeling like you have some peace of mind, that you can believe you have confidence yourself in your plan and in your strategy.
And let me just throw one more thing in. You talked about how the horrible feeling that you're going to run out at the end, that you made a big mistake. I don't know if anybody ever relates to this, but it's also sort of horrible to think I scrimped and saved when we were young and healthy and we could have been traveling. And now I've got all this money at the end and I'm stuck at home and my spouse.
You're wrong. Got it wrong.
Not so good either,
Yeah.
So Pam, you mentioned Social Security there, and that brings up another part of Jim Mahaney's resilient retirement income plan idea. And that's about what he calls building a bridge to Social Security. He calls that probably the most important part of building a resilient retirement income plan. And let me explain what it means. A Social Security bridge means you delay claiming Social Security until 70 if you can, or at least until past Social Security's full retirement age. For most people these days, that's 66 to 67. And by delaying that, what you do is you take advantage of the Social Security formula that increases the size of your benefit every year you delay claiming, and increases your benefits with inflation. The bridge part is that while you're delaying claiming Social Security, you take money out of your IRA, your other retirement savings that would be the equivalent of what you would have gotten from Social Security. And that bridge is the money that's going to help you cover your essential expenses in retirement. So let me stop there and ask you, Pam, what do you think of this idea of the bridge to Social Security and delaying?
Well, like any bridge, its intended purpose is to be short-term, right? It's not supposed to be a long-term solution. So I think that when you have to measure how long does my bridge span need to be to get from here to there, tapping into my 401k, I really feel like when you start to look at these things in isolation, you lose the big picture. I think you have to look at things that are a lot bigger considerations, because we could do math all day long and say that, if you needed 8 years And this is what you're going to benefit. This is how you're going to benefit. This is what it's going to cost you. But, I think you have to look at the big picture. It's big picture, holistic planning. And I don't think there's any simple answer to it. I think it's really good to ask the question and say, that is a strategy. Maybe it works for me, but then you have to go and figure out that strategy worked for that person, but is that strategy really going to work for me with my bridge? So in the concept of it, it's a great concept, and it becomes a potential tool on the shelf kind of strategy that you can go to. People should look at it. Definitely.
I'm going to disagree with you, because there's talk about new reports. Go to terrysavage.com. I just posted a column on Social Security, and the reason I've talked about it, we have Larry Kotlikoff, MaximizeMySocialSecurity.com, on this program explaining about it. So go to that podcast, please. But the National Bureau of Economic Research just published a paper co-authored by Larry Kotlikoff and another expert. And its conclusions are that you could have 10.4% greater spending in your lifetime if you optimized your Social Security claiming decision. That is to say, they look back at all of the claimants and so forth, and their research shows that suboptimal claiming costs you $180,000 present value in spending power over the rest of your lifetime. Now, here's the fact.
Terry,
It does look like
what optimize means, so for people who don't know what that
means that if you had, I'm basically going to say it this way, which might not be officially correct. If you had waited and delayed taking your Social Security till age 70, when you must, you would have a whole lot more money. And I want to just make that point clear that we made in that podcast. Go back and listen to it. Don't argue with me, because Kotlikoff is a guru on this. Number one, you get an 8% increase in your base check. Number two, people are saying, yeah, but if I wait another year, I won't get that big Social Security cost of living increase. That's factored into your base check too. And then at age 70, you have a significantly higher base check on which future, we hope the Fed gets inflation under control, but it's your Social Security is your one inflation adjusted check a month for life. So the future adjustments will come on a higher base. So if you can in some way bridge and not take Social Security until you're 70. The other argument is, and I get this on radio all the time, call-in shows. Yeah, but it might not be there. Relax. There are a lot of us. The government printed the money for everything. It's going to print the money for Social Security. Yeah, that'll be inflationary, but we'll get a cost of living increase. Do not worry about Social Security.
Yeah, that shouldn't be the concern. Yeah, but Terry,
wait. Do not figure out the break-even point. Well, I'm 64 now, and then by 79, I would have the extra money. It's not about averages like that. It's about hoping that maybe you'll be one of the lucky ones that lives to be 93 and drop dead with playing golf when you get a hole in one, and that those last 6 or 7 years of your life, you're having a much bigger Social Security check because you delayed till age 70. Now, look, a third of Americans live on Social Security almost exclusively, seniors who collect Social Security.
Exactly.
So we know not everybody can make that choice, but you're listening to us because we're talking about financial planning.
Yeah.
Just please, I promise you, or go watch the Kotlikoff podcast on Social Security, that if you can use this bridge, delay digging into your 401k, your IRA, you don't have to take it out till 72. You must take Social Security at 70. Delay on Social Security. When you look back, I hope your biggest regret is that you died too soon and you didn't get the biggest check, but I know your biggest happiness will be you lived longer and you got a big Social Security check because you waited.
Yeah, it's the name of the game. Also, just one quick thing I was going to throw in is researchers who are backing all this research, obviously, are proposing a more formalized way of bridging so that employers can actually help employees build that bridge themselves. And that's something that's kind of in the offing as we look at more and more research that's saying this is a strategy. We need to really focus on helping people bridge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope that we start seeing employers helping employees to do that. Let me go back to Mahaney's book for just a second and tell you that he talks about lots of financial risk factors. He talks about 6 of them, actually, that can all affect your retirement income and how to address them. Things like longevity risk, how long are you going to live, like taxes, all kinds of things. The one he says is the hardest retirement risk to manage is long-term care risk. That's because home care or assisted living or nursing home can be very expensive. Medicare rarely covers it. Most people can't qualify for Medicaid. You could buy a long-term care insurance policy, but most people don't. So let me ask Terry and Pam, what are your thoughts about managing long-term care risk? Terry?
Well, I put my money where my mouth is. You know, I have actually 2 policies, long-term care policies, and the new policies, and I think did we do a podcast on this?
Yeah.
If not, time for an update. But the old policies that I told everybody to buy 15, 20 years ago, because I've always believed in this, the insurance companies found out they had a period of low interest rates. And besides, they covered things like assisted living, and it wasn't the dreaded nursing home anymore. So people started using them. So the insurance companies started raising the premiums. And that's what many of you out there are thinking, oh no, if I raise it, I had it. If they raise the premiums, it's horrible. There is a new kind of combo policy, combined life and long-term care. You fund it with deposits, say over 10 years. If you don't use the long-term care, you name a beneficiary and they get a hunk of life insurance that gets leveraged up from your original deposit. You can fund it in one lump sum. You can even fund it from your IRA in one lump sum. Has some tax consequences. So the biggest thing that can destroy all your plans is the need for a couple $100,000 a year of spending in long-term care. Now, let me just tell you this. I've heard this argument too. I have plenty of money. Yeah, maybe you do, but wouldn't you rather leave it to your spouse and your kids and insure against it? What happens if your care relates to Alzheimer's or a stroke and lasts longer than the average 2.5, 3 years? What if it goes on for 5 or 6 or 8 years? What are you doing to your spouse? What are you doing to the inheritance you hope to leave to your children? So look into long-term care insurance. Do not dismiss it, because you're right, Richard, that's the biggest risk to any good retirement plan. Wacko, $6,000 a month, $7,000 a month, and it could be that or more.
Yeah. The input that I have on any strategy that is available to us to use it as a tool, annuities are a tool, right? Until you look at the fine print, some are really great tools. They work, they're effective, they're simple, they're straightforward. It's looking under the hood. It's not taking it at face value. It's understanding what are the costs associated, what are the restrictions associated. Long-term care is something that buying it at the right time, making sure that you're reading the fine print so that chronic long-term conditions can be covered. You might be able to get coverage, in your home, at assisted living, adult daycare centers. So considering all of these things just as tools, not to say, we're not telling you go do that. We're telling you these are tools, and they all have details and fine print associated. So you got to look under the hood and consider them to be available tools and available strategies. And it's just, there's no one size fits all answer. And there is a certain age at which, if you buy long-term care insurance, there's a kind of a sweet spot. Terry, would you agree with me in buying long-term care?
Not with these combo policies. And a lot of people in the olden days, when you bought it at age 62, because the price was supposed to remain stable, unless they raised it for the whole class of people, that was true. So you bought it when it was cheaper and you paid the premium level.
Yeah.
But to Pam's point, for people who are thinking about buying just straight long-term care insurance policies, if they wait to try to get one in their late 60s or 70s, they very well be turned down, because they'll be told by the insurance company, no, we're not taking people like you. You've got a pre-existing condition, or you're
too old.
Right. So for people who want to buy that kind of a policy, it's really best to think about it in your 50s or possibly your early 60s. The other thing I would say is, in terms of long-term care, a lot of people, and Jim Mahaney talks about this in his book, a lot of people are thinking about tapping their home equity and possibly even taking out a reverse mortgage. Now, I think reverse mortgages could be good for some people. They also come with a lot of strings attached. They can be expensive. So people need to really take a look at those before they decide to take them. But a lot of people do have home equity, and that kind of home equity may be able to help them cover some of the long-term care costs for their parents, for a spouse, or partner. With that, let me just wrap up and just say that, I think the whole topic of creating a resilient retirement income plan is going to be more and more important. It's something a lot of people don't think about. I really hope that they do. I think Jim's book is helpful, but there are a lot of good financial advisors who can help you do it too. And I hope our audience takes a look at resilient retirement income plans. Thanks, everybody.
Friends Talk Money is funded in part by a grant from the Investor Protection Trust. The IPT is a nonprofit organization devoted to investor education. Since 1993, the IPT has worked with the states to provide the independent, objective investor education needed by all Americans to make informed investment decisions. Visit investorprotection.org. We also receive support from the North American Securities Administrators Association, known as NASA. It's the oldest international investor protection organization. NASA's members include state and provincial securities regulators from the U.S., Canada, and Mexico who serve on the front lines of investor protection. Recognizing that education and awareness are powerful tools in the fight against investment fraud, NASA is pleased to sponsor Friends Talk Money. Here are 3 important tips to help you protect your money from fraud. With investing, there are always risks, so be cautious of anybody telling you that a certain investment is guaranteed. You should also proceed with caution if somebody is promising very large investment returns. This is a common red flag for investment fraud. Last and most importantly, be sure you're working with a licensed or registered financial professional. You can check your advisor and make sure they're licensed by visiting brokercheck.finra.org. NASA is your partner in keeping you safe and helping you avoid investment frauds. Visit nasa.org and click on the Investor Education tab to learn more.